All right, let's skip the pleasantries today and jump straight into one of the absolute most fascinating and honestly most misunderstood questions in all of economics. Look, poverty is a massive global issue, and it really seems like so many of our daily struggles just come down to not having enough money. So the obvious, seemingly perfect solution is staring us right in the face. Why doesn't the government just turn on the printers, right? If we just print more money, everybody gets rich and everybody's happy. Well, today in this explainer, we're going to break down why that perfectly logical-sounding idea is actually a complete, disastrous economic illusion.
Seriously, I want you to picture this. Imagine a world where the printing presses just run all night long. You wake up tomorrow morning, you roll over, check your banking app, and boom, $10 million. And it's not just you. Every single person in your city, your entire country, has also received exactly $10 million. Boom. No more poverty, no more debt. Suddenly, we are all incredibly wealthy. I mean, it sounds like absolute perfection, doesn't it?
Okay, let's dive into this and see what actually happens next. Say it's a few weeks after everyone got this massive payday. You walk into a restaurant and a basic burger now costs $500. You run to the grocery store and a single loaf of bread is a cool $100. You try to buy just a normal, everyday car and they quote you $2 million. The numbers in your bank account are huge, yeah, but your $10 million is suddenly completely worthless. So how is it that a policy that makes everyone richer on paper actually makes everyone poorer in reality?
Chapter 1: Money versus Real Wealth. To solve this mystery, we've got to challenge a really fundamental assumption most of us carry around every day.
Here's the crucial point. Money is not wealth. Let me say that again. Money is just a tool. It's basically a ticket system that helps us trade real things. You can't eat a dollar bill, right? You can't live inside a bank statement. Real wealth is actually the tangible goods, the services, the production that genuinely improves our living standards, not the paper currency we use to trade for all of that.
Real wealth is stuff like food, houses, cars, technology, factories, and even human skills. Let's think about this through a classic thought experiment. Imagine an isolated island with exactly 5 people on it. And on this island, there are exactly 10 coconuts and 10 fish. That's it. That's the entire economy. Now, if a helicopter flies over and dumps $1 million in cash onto the beach, does the island suddenly have more coconuts? Nope. More fish? No. The real wealth stayed exactly the same. Literally only the paper numbers changed.
Chapter 2: The Microeconomy. Let's zoom in on a simplified model to see the exact mechanics of how this plays out for us. This next example perfectly illustrates the core mechanics of inflation. Imagine a tiny town. 10 people live there, and there are exactly 10 pizzas available. Everyone has $10, and hey, every pizza costs $10. Perfect balance. But then, the government decides to print an extra $100 and hands it out. Now everyone has $20. Amazing! Except, here's the catch. There are still only 10 pizzas. The bakery can't just magically bake more because the wheat fields are limited. So, the bakery owner looks out, sees 10 people holding a $20 bill, all fighting over the same 10 pizzas. Human nature kicks in, they want to maximize profit, so what do? They raise the price to $20. Now, everyone spends twice as much money, but they still only get one pizza. Their actual purchasing power hasn't changed one bit. And that, my friends, is inflation. More money chasing the exact same amount of goods.
Because of this old dynamic, inflation acts like a hidden tax. Say you stash 20 grand under your mattress for 10 years. Over that decade, the government prints more money, the money supply goes up, and prices naturally rise until everything costs twice as much. You pull that 20 grand out from under the mattress, and nobody actually broke in and stole your bills. But because the prices of goods doubled around you, your money now buys exactly half of what it used to. Your wealth was literally taxed away by inflation.
Chapter 3: The Safe Money Printing. Now you might be thinking, hold on a second. Governments do print money all the time. And you know what? You're absolutely right. They do. But they have to do it very, very carefully. The only reason governments can sometimes get away with printing money without causing total disaster is that economies naturally grow. Every single year, a healthy country produces more food, more cars, more phones, more services. And if the real production of goods is growing, well, the money supply can actually grow right alongside it without causing massive inflation. It's kind of like adding more water to a swimming pool that is actively expanding its walls. As long as the pool keeps getting bigger, the water level, or, the prices, stay totally stable. The disaster only hits when the money grows way faster than the actual stuff being produced.
Chapter 4. History's Trillion-Dollar Mistakes. So let's shift gears from theory to some pretty devastating history. What actually happens when governments completely ignore that balance?
Let's follow the timeline here because this builds into some terrifying historical patterns. We're looking at three distinct eras: Weimar Germany in 1923, Zimbabwe in 2008, and Venezuela in 2016. Across completely different times and continents, these three cases prove that human nature and bad economic management lead to absolute chaos when you abuse the printing press.
Starting with Weimar Germany. After World War I, their infrastructure was ruined, and they owed massive war reparations. The economy was broke. So, out of sheer desperation, the government just started recklessly printing money. And the result? By November 1923, prices were doubling literally every few hours. A loaf of bread that cost 250 marks in January hit 200 billion marks by November. Think about that. Workers would rush out to spend their paychecks the exact minute they got them because the money was losing value by the second. People were taking actual wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy groceries. Kids were playing with stacks of useless banknotes like building blocks, and families were literally tossing cash into their stoves because it was cheaper to burn money than to buy actual firewood.
Fast forward to Zimbabwe in 2008. They pushed through these aggressive land reforms where inexperienced farmers took over, and as a result, agricultural production completely tanked. They were creating way fewer actual goods. So, to cover their expenses and fix this shrinking economy, the government just printed huge amounts of money. The result? An inflation rate of 89.7 sextillion% per year. Yeah, you heard me. That is 89.7 followed by 20 zeros. It was so completely out of control that the government had to issue a $100 trillion banknote. Just imagine being a multi-trillionaire on paper, but you literally need to take out a loan just to buy a carton of eggs.
And man, we saw the exact same story play out in Venezuela around 2016. Venezuela is sitting on incredible oil reserves, but when global oil prices crashed, their massive government income just vanished overnight. But they didn't want to cut their spending or drop their cheap, subsidized prices. So what did they do? They turned to the printing press. As all this new money flooded an economy that was producing less and less, hyperinflation took off. People were carrying giant bags of cash just to buy toilet paper. Eventually, the currency became so worthless that people were literally throwing it into the gutters. Businesses stopped accepting it entirely, only wanting US dollars or just resorting to pure old-fashioned barter.
Chapter 5. What about foreign debt and COVID? Now, if you're a sharp observer, you might have a couple of modern objections rolling around in your head right now. For instance, why not just print money specifically to pay off foreign debt? That way, it doesn't inflate things for the people at home, right? Good theory, but foreign creditors aren't foolish. They are constantly tracking economic reports and currency markets. If a country suddenly prints billions to pay off a loan, they're inflating their total money supply. Those creditors are going to instantly see that newly printed cash as devalued toy money. They'll lose all trust, refuse to accept it, and that nation's reputation on the global stage is totally destroyed.
And then there's COVID-19. Yes, central banks absolutely expanded the money supply in a massive way to support households and jumpstart idle factories during the lockdowns. And to be fair, in a severe recession, careful money printing can stimulate demand. But as we've seen today, creating tons of new money when factories are shut down and real wealth isn't being created, well, it has consequences. The inflation we all felt recently was a really complex mix of supply chain shocks, energy issues, and high demand, for sure. But pouring all that extra money into circulation absolutely played a huge role.
Chapter 6. How to actually build wealth. All right, so if firing up the printing press is a historically proven failure, what's the actual fix? How do we actually cure poverty and build lasting wealth?
Let's look at the illusion versus the reality. The illusion is printing unbacked paper money. It's the easy way out, and it always leads to hyperinflation and lost trust. The reality is focusing on creating real value. Look at highly successful economies like Japan or South Korea. They don't rely on printing their way to wealth. They pour their energy into education, building amazing infrastructure, pushing technology forward, and helping businesses grow. Because when a country produces a massive supply of high-quality goods and services, prices naturally stabilize. Jobs are created, people earn money through real work, and society as a whole actually prospers. It literally all boils down to this one core truth. The solution to becoming richer isn't printing more money, it's producing more value. Printing money is exactly like handing out thousands of extra tickets to a concert that has a strictly fixed number of seats. You aren't building a bigger stadium, you're just making every single ticket less valuable. You can't eat money. Real wealth only ever comes from what a country can create, build, and innovate, never from how much currency it manages to print.
So let me leave you with this final thought.
If you suddenly found yourself in charge of a country facing massive debt and widespread poverty, what would be your play? Would you A. Print more money and risk the illusion? B. Raise taxes? C. Cut spending? Or D. Try something completely new? Think about it and let us know what your strategy would be. Because truly understanding the difference between paper money and real wealth is the most valuable investment you could ever make. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep on learning.